Hey guys, welcome back to another devlog. It's ArtDude47, and today we are going to get into developing the characters more, making them more interesting, and making more possible ways to interact with them. But first, between now and the last devlog, what I did was I made a list of some things that I felt were relatively boring to watch, but that needed to be done, and I went ahead and got those taken care of. So I just wanted to show off to you what state the game's in now, what I've done since the last time we saw each other. And so the first thing I'll do here is I'll go ahead and play the game. And when it plays, everything should look pretty much the same. Some of the UI may need work again. What I did was increase their resolution, so I've got to get them looking the way I want, but the resolution's been increased. So first things first, you'll notice, one, I've got that button that grows a little bit when you mouse over it, just to kind of let you know which one you're selecting. And then two, I've got that tooltip that pops up. If you hover over the button for about a half a second, tooltip pops up to let you know what it does. Now, the growth effect, I used DoTween to get done, so I just got that off the Unity Asset Store. It's a free asset, and it makes things like this pretty easy. So that being said, I also went ahead and changed the calendar opening animation to DoTween. And so now it just slides down, very nicely, and then slides away. So that's all done for DoTween. The other thing I did was I finally fixed the annoying bug. It really didn't affect anything of how the logic of the gameplay worked, but it annoyed me so much that the stats visually were updating a day after they should have. So when you clicked a stat for Monday, it would update on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. When it shouldn't have updated on Saturday, it was the task you were doing Monday. So now if I click it, updates on Monday, then goes to Tuesday and updates, and so on. And you'll notice that it keeps going through, and then it stops on Friday, but there's no stat updates being done on Friday. So we finally got that taken care of. And then the last thing is I needed to use some kind of temporary art for NPCs. Because as we get more in depth, we're going to need some art to kind of placehold them, and so we can test things. And so what I did was I did go ahead and take some art from one of my favorite games, Persona 4. So now you can see we've got Yukiko Magi, and she comes over and greets you, just so I can mess around with character art since I don't have any yet for the game. I'm not the best artist, and so I have been practicing and learning a little bit, but I'm still not quite there with characters. So as I continue to practice and get where I need to be, I'm just going to use these as a placeholder for now. But that's everything I've added between now and the last time that you saw the game. So from here on out, let's get into some new stuff, developing some characters. Okay, so to flesh out NPCs, I think the first thing that I want to work on is obviously more ways to interact with the NPC. Currently, we have a way to meet them, and it works fine. You can set up what skill requirements they have, what activities they like, and then you can meet them during those activities, as long as you meet the skill requirements. That works. It can be infinitely scaled. I can make as many NPCs as I want with as many different combinations as I want. They can even require multiple stats, so that all works. Problem is, once you've met the NPC currently, you can never interact with them again. There's nothing set up for that. So the next thing I would like to work on is random encounters with NPCs that you've already met. And I've been thinking a little bit about how this should work, and it should happen throughout the week. Every day it'll check and see if there's a random interaction. But that led me to a problem, which is that we need to add different locations to the game. Even when you're meeting the NPCs, like currently it still shows your bedroom as the background, and when you're doing activities it still shows your bedroom as the background when it shouldn't be. So I think the first thing I need to add is some sort of location manager. I'm thinking we'll have a class of different locations, maybe scriptable objects that will contain a background image, the name of the location, and that might be it. It might not need any more data. Maybe it'll have a day and night image, I don't know. And then the location manager class will track all of those locations, and it will have a method to handle changing locations. and so it will change to the location that's required based on either the activity that's chosen or the random event that's happening. So let's get into that. We'll start coding that location manager, starting with our location scriptable object. Alright, so I threw together a system real quickly to handle the locations. So a few things that I had to change for this to happen. The first, you'll notice there's a new text floating up above here. This will slide down when you change locations, say the name of the location, and then slide back up. Nothing too crazy there. While I was doing this, I also took the chance to change how I'm handling fade to black. I mentioned earlier that I've been using the DoTween library, and that just handles it better, so we did it that way. So a few different scripts we needed to add for this to all happen. We've got a location scriptable object, which is a really simple script here. Once it finally loads, basically it's just got the create the location for the creating it in the editor. It's got a name and it's got an image. Next, we've got the location manager script. This one will be a singleton. It needs reference to where the background image goes, also the fade image. It's got the rect transform of that location name box I showed you, and then the text. Then it's got a list of location scriptable objects, or an array for all the locations, and then it's got an int to represent the current location. So we set up the singleton pattern in awake, nothing crazy there. Then we've got this change location. It takes an index, and then it can have an action, but it defaults to null. So then the new location, we do get location index, and so I'll just show you that real quick. We've got get location, we use an int index, and so if the index is greater than 0 plus it exists within our array of locations, we return that location. Otherwise, we just return an error here. And so once we get that new location, we set our current location to it, and if it's not null, then we go ahead and we fade to black. So we're using do fade from the DoTween library to do that. Basically, we're going all the way to black. It's going to take half a second to do it, and then once it's done doing that, we're going to set the background sprite. We're going to set the location name text. Then we're going to fade back in, and then the location box is going to drop to where it needs to be. And when it does that, when it finishes that, we're going to wait 2 seconds. Then the location box is going to go away, and we're going to invoke any action that was sent. And that's basically it there. So we just had to change one thing here in the NPC manager. Before, when we went to meet the NPC, it handled the fade to black. So now what we do instead is we call the location manager.instance.change location. We give it the location of the introduction dialog. And so I did just also add a location field to the dialog scriptable object. And then once that's done, the action it's passing is all of this, where it just updates that the NPC met the player and the NPC starts talking to the player. And that's pretty much all that had to be updated to make this work. So now there was one other thing where I needed to get a temporary piece of art just to test this. So again, I know I kind of referenced it with the persona characters. I'm just trying to quickly prototype here, and so I'm not trying to go create art as needed. I'll probably start tackling art much later in the project. So I got something off Google Images just to represent a park. I'll link the art in the description so that way it's there. But so if we go ahead and play, we'll work out because I have this set up to always meet an NPC currently for testing. So it fades to black, we get to the local park, changes the images to park, and then we meet Yukiko like we had been. Then when we leave the park, we are fading to black again, your bedroom, and it's continuing the day. And that's really it from what I added now. Also, if you work out again, it doesn't re-meet the NPC since it's been updated that they've been met. But that's all I've got so far that I've added. So next what I'm going to do is try to start working on some random encounters you can have with NPCs that you've already met. That will take place at a few different locations. So I'm going to add some locations, and then I'm going to start working on that event script, so that way we can add those into the game. Alright, so I'm checking in to show you guys what I've got so far. Basically, I wanted to show you the problem I'm having so you can see that it's not all always success and easygoing. So I put in the chance to have a random encounter with NPCs that you have already met. For testing, I set it to a 100% chance, so if you know an NPC, you should have a random encounter with them. And I'll just show you what happens when I try it. I'm not quite sure what's causing the issue yet, but I am investigating and I'll figure it out. But so first, we'll work out as usual, so that way we can meet an NPC. And, you know, this works just fine. But then, when it goes to the next day, maybe you saw that, it went to back to home, and Yukiko was still standing there, so that's an issue. And then it went to Tuesday, and it did pull up the school background, but it skipped straight to Wednesday after that. And now you bumped into Yukiko walking to class. So, I'm not sure why it just skipped Tuesday. This should have happened on Tuesday. And now, as you see, it works just fine. She talks to you, and then you can go forward, but she's still in your bedroom. And then Thursday it stops, but Friday it works. So I've got to figure out what's causing this. Plus, if you saw, the date did some weird stuff. It basically acted like it was Friday twice. So I'm trying to figure that out. I will show you one thing. If I just stop it and run it again, you'll see when I meet Yukiko, and I think this might actually be what's causing the issue where she still appears in your bedroom. When I meet her, I fix the code so that it pulls her name and her portrait for every line of dialogue. So now, before it switches back to your room, I think I need to make sure that the dialogue goes back to the working out dialogue so she's not there. But I will show you real quick how I fixed that issue, because it's a pretty interesting solution I came up with. I did this in our dialogue system, and basically I did add NPC to dialogue. It takes an NPC and it takes a dialogue. It sets the speaker name to the NPC name, and it sets the icon to the NPC portrait. And then this is the interesting line. So if the dialogue.nextDialogue is not null, it just calls the function again, except on the next dialogue. So it'll go down the line of dialogues. The dialogue could be 50 lines long, and as long as it has a next dialogue, it will go and replace the name and the icon. And then when it doesn't, it's done. So that way, if I have generic dialogues that could be used by multiple NPCs, now instead of having to make one for each of them, I could just call this method and replace their information on the one piece of dialogue. Anyway, that's what I wanted to show right now. I'm going to go back heads down and get coding and try to figure out what's causing this issue. So I'll check back in soon. I'm quickly checking back in. I am getting very close. So I just wanted to show you what I've got so far. It's not quite fixed yet, so I'm still working on it. I'll show you everything I've changed once I get everything working. But one thing I did need to do, I changed the day length to 10 seconds just for testing. So now if we work out, we're going to meet Yukiko just like usual. Now it goes back to your bedroom. She disappears, but not before it goes back to your bedroom, so I still got to work on that. And then, like I said, 10 seconds go by. But now, Tuesday, everything's working. You bump into Yukiko at school while walking to class. Hey, good to see you again. Whatever. Now it goes back to your bedroom. And like I said, 2 seconds or 10 seconds go by. Now Wednesday, I believe I already said I've got it set to 100% for testing purposes. And I'm glad I did that because I found a little bug that I don't think I would have otherwise. Notice that the whole text hasn't displayed this time. Now the way I'm doing the typewriter effect, let me just pull it up real quick. We'll talk about this. The way I'm doing the typewriter effect, if I go to this, is basically what we're doing is we're setting the visible characters to 0, and then as we go through, we are increasing the number of max visible characters. But we are changing it at the end, if we skip it, just the dialogue length.
And so basically it maxes out at the dialogue length of max visible characters. The problem is then if we go in and try to display an instant dialogue before or after a typewriter's gone that's longer than the previous dialogue. So just for instance, say we had a typewriter effect that was just the word hi, and then we have a whole sentence as the next one and it's an instant dialogue. It's only going to display those two first letters for the hi because that was the dialogue length in the max visible characters. I never reset to show the full dialogue. So I'm going to fix that real quick, but I would have never run into this bug otherwise, at least not yet. So that's what I've got so far. The few different things I showed you are what's still wrong. Yukiko's image still showing up in your bedroom when you're continuing your activities, and then this text not going all the way through. So I'm going to get those fixed, and then we're going to go over everything that I needed to change to make this happen.
Alright, so I'm back. I have everything working. The game is finally in a pretty much a playable state. So I've got it running here, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to play it for you. So we know that in order to meet Yukiko, we have to work on our fitness. So we'll go ahead and work out. You'll notice my athletics going up, the days of the week going up, everything I've showed you before. I believe she requires 50 athletics, and then there's just a chance that she'll meet you. It's not guaranteed, but it does go up daily, so that way you're not just never meeting her. Alright, so we meet her Monday morning. We got Yukiko. You see it actually went to the park. Everything was fine there. Hopefully I'll see you around. We go back to our bedroom, finish out Monday. And then at Tuesday, we actually bump into her. Hey, it's good to see you again. Go back to our bedroom. Wednesday, we bumped into her. I think I might have forgot to set it back to a normal chance, so let's go ahead and do that real quick. If we just pull up the event, yep, see it's 1, which is 100%. We will make it 0.25 for now for testing, so that way we're not running into her every day. Good to see you again. Alright, so now we will switch to science because that is what Shie likes. So now we ran into Shie, but that was just with with Yukiko, but that was just the 25% chance. We'll continue doing science. And there we go. Now we ran into Shie. And of course, these are all at the local park, but that's just because we haven't made scenarios, but they're just scriptable objects, so we can easily make scenarios for meeting the other NPCs as well. And then Rise cares about your appearance. And of course, we'll have to get the percentage right for how often you should run into an NPC. 25% is probably too high. I'm not exactly sure how Tokimeki Memorial handles it either, because we may want to look into making it less likely after you've already run into an NPC once. And then we've got Rise. We might want to make it less likely to run into the same NPC or just less likely to run into an NPC at all. And you see here we bumped into Shie at school. And we bumped into Rise at school. So it all works. Everybody says their name properly. Everything's working. It was a battle to get here, but I'm very happy with the progress that has been made so far today. So next, we're going to jump into the code, and I'm going to show you what went wrong and what finally got everything working.
All right, into the code we go. So I must say I am very happy to finally have this figured out. It gave me a hard time. It was a lot of problem solving. The main thing that was the issue was that we were skipping days before events took place. And so I finally figured it out when I decided, you know what? Let me just make a day take a longer than 1.5 seconds, because that's what it currently takes, and just see what happens. And lo and behold, when I made the day take 10 seconds long. Everything worked fine, albeit at a slight delay. It took about 3 seconds before the event started. So I tracked it down to realize that that had to do with how we were implementing the location manager. So currently, when we change location, we fade to black, and then when it's done fading to black, we set the background sprite for the new location and the location text. If there's a dialogue pass through, then we'll also start that dialogue because it could take a dialogue. Then, when it's done, we fade back in and we slide the location box down from the top of the screen. When that's done, we wait 2 seconds and then we remove the location box from the screen. Previously, this onComplete.invoke was in here, waiting for 2 seconds before it would invoke the onComplete. And so since the days were only 1.5 seconds, and this was waiting 2 seconds, it was causing a day to get skipped, where an event should have been taking place, but it wasn't. But because that delayed call doesn't get called until after we've already faded out and then faded back in, you were still getting this weird effect where it would skip the day, but it would look like it started the event. It would take you to the location of wherever the event was supposed to be, and then just skip the day and go to a new day. It took me much longer than I would have liked it to, and much longer than I would like to admit to finally figure that out, but that is the piece of code that was causing an issue. I'm going to kind of be brief with the rest of the code because I think this episode's probably getting long, but there are a few other things I wanted to show you. In the dialogue system, there was a method I had added a while ago called the replace dialogue method. And what it did was it took the dialogue string and then it checked to see if there was this tag NPC name, and if there was, it replaced it with the actual speaker name of the dialogue. And if there was player name, it replaced it with the player's first name. The problem was that in the start dialogue, when that was being called, and let me just see where it's being called here. Right here. It was originally replacing the actual dialogue line of the dialogue scriptable object. So if I was reusing that object on multiple NPCs, it would get replaced to the first NPC's name and then saved. So subsequent NPCs would not say their name, they would say that first NPC's name. So now instead we're just saving it to a temporary string, so that way it's not changing the actual dialogue scriptable object that's being used. Other thing I wanted to talk about real quickly is with our NPCs. I know I showed you briefly that I had made a serializable dictionary class. Well, that wasn't quite working properly, and I couldn't figure out what was going on, so I just thought there's probably an easier way to get around this, and there was. So I made a new class called Stat Requirements. It's a serializable class, and it just takes a string stat name and an int required value. And so now instead of serializable dictionaries, the NPC can just hold a list of stat requirements, and it works the same except better because it actually works. So I think those are all of the big things in the code I wanted to show to you real quick. I have a feeling this episode's getting pretty long, so we're going to go ahead and end it here. Again, I thank you all for watching. If you don't mind, please leave a like, and if you want to keep up with the development, please feel free to subscribe. Leave any comments with questions, feedback, anything you can, and I will see you all in the next devlog.